And you know, draft week is not complete unless we bring in Dave Lapham for everything Bengals in the NFL draft. Lap, the draft is finally here. I guess, where are the Bengals here with the number 5 pick, you think?
Well, Chris, I think it's going to be an overall evaluation of not just tunnel vision on the 5th pick in the draft. I think it's going to be what's the best value combined 5 and 38. Where is the depth of the draft at those two position groups? And I think the consensus around the league from people that I talk to, it falls in favor of the offensive line a little bit. So that basically says, well, you might go with the receiver, whoever that receiver may be. If Pitts is there, they'd have to consider it, I guess. But I think that Chase is the guy that they're targeting, and he'd be a big addition. There's no question about it. And then at 38, go with the offensive lineman. But if a run is made at that offensive line position, you might have to think about edge rush. If there's an edge rush guy at 38 that they didn't expect to be there, and address the offensive line in the 3rd round.
They've improved the roster significantly over the last couple of years, but where are the biggest positions in need you think they need to address in this draft?
Yeah, I do think that offensive line is definitely one. Receiver, would be another with the loss of A.J. Green, and really edge rush. And the way it is in this division, look at Cleveland now. They have 2 first picks of the draft, not just 2 first-round draft picks, 2 first picks of the draft as bookends that you're going to have to pass block against. Pittsburgh has T.J. Watt, and they blitz like crazy. Baltimore blitzes like crazy, and you got to pressure their quarterback as well. So it's a league-wide thing. I think, you definitely need people that can protect the quarterback, people that can affect the quarterback when they're rushing, people that can catch the football, and people that can cover. Those are big deals in the National Football League today.
Penei Sewell is obviously getting a lot of talk around town because he is rated as the top tackle in the draft. When you look at him in the measurables, what makes him stand out?
Yeah, he's a beast. He's 6'5", 330 pounds, so he's a beast physically, but he has the agility and the balance and the movement skills of somebody performing a ballet. And you don't really find many beast ballerinas out there, He's one of those kind of guys. That's how Anthony Munoz was. When Anthony Munoz got drafted here, I was playing with the Bengals, and he was huge. He filled the door frame, and he had big hair at that point, so there was no sun anywhere coming around him in that doorway. But he goes out in the football field, and he's moving like he's a 205-pound safety, a 300-pound guy. And Sewell has a little bit of that to him, and he anchors well. I played against some Samoan descent defensive linemen, and they're like rooted trees, man. Their knees are over their ankles, their hips are over their knees, and it's hard to move them. And I think Sewell's got some of that. I do think he's young. I do think he's inexperienced. Honestly, when I look at Slater and Turner, Vera Turner from USC, those guys finish better. They stay on blocks, they sustain, but they're more polished. They've played a longer period of time. Sewell got an Outland Trophy, and then he didn't play. So, and he's young. He's not even 21 years old yet. So, his upside his ceiling is much higher than anybody else's. There's no question about that.
Now, of course, draft talk is always silly talk at some point. 33-inch arms. Do you think how long are your arms, and is that a concern?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I've never had my arms measured. They didn't really, I guess, do all that. They measure hands and arms and wingspan, and everything. I think that's about the break point, though. 33 inches is probably about where you can think that you can get away with it. But honestly, players playing at that level, they're draftable players in the National Football League. They've figured out a way to overcome a deficiency. So if they have short arms, they have tremendous footwork and balance. Because if they're in a phone booth, it's hard to get them off their feet, So they have a strength that counters the weakness that they've had. Every single player is different. And every single player has to overcome things and utilize strengths and overcome weaknesses. So the tape tells the story, but I do think that arm length is a little bit of a factor. It can be a tiebreaker probably to some people, for sure.
The other half of this issue that has completely, divided the fan base is Team Sewell, Team Chase. Ja'Marr Chase, a lot of people might forget because we haven't seen him since he last played with Joe Burrow, an absolute monster at LSU. When you watch him, what stands out about him?
Like you said, absolute monster. He is Anquan Boldin, physicality and toughness, but a much faster, stronger athlete. but he'll block on the edge. I mean, he's gonna help Joe Mixon and the running backs in the running game. He'll block like a tight end. He's 6 feet 6'1", a little over 200 pounds. But pound for pound, they say he's one of the strongest guys down there in the LSU program. And you watch him run routes against SEC cornerbacks who were drafted high in the NFL, so it transitions pretty well. And like you said, he and Joe Burrow were teammates. 1,780 yards and 20 touchdowns that he had in 2019 are still SEC records. So in a year where you're still limited a little bit what you can do with OTAs, over half the league is saying don't even report, don't do anything in the offseason. I don't know about mini camps. The fact that he and Joe Burrow already have an established success story. Joe Burrow's thrown to him. Joe Burrow knows where he likes the football, how he likes the football, and vice versa. So it's not like you're throwing to somebody totally unknown. So that should make it an easier transition as well. So I can see a lot of reasons that they'd be excited to have Chase on the football team for sure. I know Joe Burrow would definitely be excited to have him on the football team.
I know Joe Burrow, there's been reports that he was lobbying for Chase. There's some reports that he hasn't been. But if you're Duke Tobin going into the draft and you're looking at Chase, does that connection with Burrow play into the final decision, you think?
Absolutely. I think, you do your due diligence and you talk to everybody, equipment guys, trainers, assistant coaches, everybody that worked with Chase. Why not the quarterback that worked with him, Joe Burrow? I mean, that's great intel, and the fact that they're, obviously friends. I mean, that shouldn't be a reason that you draft a guy. But the fact that they put up the numbers they put up, the way they played together, I think they feed off each other. I think that Joe Burrow knows what he brings to the table, and Chase knows what he's going to get from Joe Burrow. It's just when you have that kind of synergy and you put up the type of season that they did, you feel like that could potentially translate to the National Football League because, again, they did it against SEC competition. A lot of guys drafted into the National Football League. So I think, honestly, and not just the Bengals, but people I've talked to around the league, they feel like Chase is the best receiver of the last two drafts, not just this draft. Last year's draft as well. If he were in last year's draft, he would have been the best receiver from an evaluation standpoint. So I can see why the Bengals are so high on him.
Edge defender is not something that gets talked about a lot because everyone's focusing on the offensive line and the receiving core because those are the flashy positions, I guess you could say. How important is it for them, the Bengals, to improve that pass rush and get a guy in there that can really contribute?
Yeah, I mean, they basically, went 1 for 1. They lost Lawson, they signed Hendrickson. So you still, you need another guy. You need another edge rush guy, or you need some to improve the interior pass rush, as well. And if you can get somebody like Turner, this big guy out of Houston, he's big body guy. He's got 35-inch arms. He's got an over 80-inch wingspan, so he can tie his shoes without bending over. He's one of those kind of guys. So he's got the length and strength, and he can give you some inside pass rush as well as pass rush on the edge. And he might be there in the third round. You'd have to probably cross your fingers, your toes, and everything you could cross. But my Christmas Day or go to bed on Christmas Eve and wake up Christmas Day draft in April would be if somebody, and the Bengals don't want to go down any further than number 7. I wouldn't anyway, because there's 3 guys you're talking about. You're talking about Chase, you're talking about Pitts, and you're talking about Sewell. So if you're at number 5, you don't want to go to number 8. What if they go 5, 6, and 7 and you're shut out? So if for some reason the Detroit Lions would trade up to 5 because they have a guy targeted, and the Bengals would just go back to 5, pick up an extra second or third round pick in so doing, and have 4 picks out of the top 71 guys in the country, and then you can draft wide receiver, you can draft offensive line, edge rush, and then double down on either an offensive lineman or an edge rush guy. You'd have 4 of the top 71 guys in the country to do it with. To me, that would be like a Christmas Day draft, but I'm not sure that Detroit would move up from 7 to 5. They've got as many needs as the Bengals do. I don't see them giving up draft picks. But, maybe Santa Claus will answer. Who knows?
Hey, Santa Claus. It's snowing in Cleveland right now. Maybe Santa gets a little confused.
That's
since
true.
It's December.
That's true.
How critical is this draft? The franchise has so much, momentum going forward with Burrow, with all the young guys that they have. How critical is it that they get more guys and keep this momentum and building?
Yeah, I think it's big, Chris. Last year they had the first pick of every round. So, and they hit it. They did well. I think all draft, quote, experts But even people around the league that I believe in and trust over the years said, yeah, they having high picks is one thing, but executing and getting good football players, that's where the rubber meets the road, and the rubber met the road for them last year. You don't like to have the first pick of the draft and the fifth pick of the draft every round 2 years in a row, so you have to capitalize. You don't like why you got there, but now that you're there, you gotta fulfill it. You have to execute, and that's why, in my mind, not just the fifth pick of the draft or the 38th pick of the draft or whatever pick of the draft. I think every single round, listen to the phones, because you might be able to pick up an extra round guy. If you're in the third round and somebody calls and says, I want to move up, whatever the formula says, how many spots they want to move up, and you can pick up another late fourth or an early fifth, I'd do that in a heartbeat. I think you're just trying to get as many good football players in the mix as you possibly can, unless you have somebody that you're totally falling in love with. And the one thing that you can never predict is when the runs will happen on different position groups. It's like you may have a great plan. That's why you don't want to draft, you don't want to move down any lower than 7 in that first round, because if you move down to 15 or 10 or whatever, and those guys are gone, it's a totally different ball game for you. Even though you picked up another player, you'd like to be able to get one of those 3 guys and pick up an extra draft pick as well. And in ensuing rounds as well, they should think along those same lines.
Hey, Bill Belichick built a Super Bowl dynasty with a lot of third, fourth, and fifth round picks. So
there's no doubt. In this year's draft, Chris, I think that you're looking to get starters, as many starters and contributors as you possibly can, particularly with these early picks. I think as late as the 4th and 5th round, you're going to get potential starters in the interior of the offensive line, not necessarily a tackle, but the interior of that offensive line. I think there's some definite depth there. That's why I think the Bengals may go receiver and then offensive line, because if you start accumulating additional picks, in those 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, that's where you may be able to double down and get a couple of decent linemen that could vie for a starting position down the road.
Give me some names that maybe not a lot of people know that you're looking at and say, this is a guy I think the Bengals could take and would be a good contributor.
Yeah, like I said, I think, Turner on the edge rush, the kid out of Houston, I like him. As far as in the offensive line, I like Eckenberg, the kid out of Notre Dame. I like him, at the tackle position. I like Little out of Stanford. The problem with him is he opted out in 2019. He got hurt early in the 2018 season, but he's 6'7", 315 pounds, 320 pounds, pretty athletic. There's a lot of linemen that their gene pool. I like Slater a lot. Like I said, I think Slater finishes well. Slater's dad played in the NBA. Sewell's uncle and 2 of his brothers played football. His uncle played in the NFL. All these guys have bloodlines where they've got uncles, dads, cousins, brothers, all playing in the National Football League. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think that the bloodlines factor is big because they've been around it. They have a little idea what it's about, and they've experienced a little bit in their lives.
Tell me, how do you think it all shakes out number 5 on Thursday?
Barring a trade, I've been going back and forth on all the mock drafts I've been doing. Literally, I'm torn. I'm 50-50. I'd be fine with Sewell. I'd be fine with Chase. I have a feeling, though, like I said, because of the depth in the offensive line, they can get a better lineman at 38 than they can get receiver. There's a quicker fall off in a lot of people's opinions at the receiver position than there is at offensive line. So I have a feeling that it may be Chase at number 5 and whatever best offensive lineman that they have on their board at 38. And when they go offense, the first 2 picks, they got to go edge rush in that 3rd pick of the draft. They got to address that spot because they don't have much depth as a defensive end or / defensive end outside rush guy. So they got to go after that as well.
So breaking news: Dave Lapham is Team Chase.
Well, I'm Team Sewell, Team Chase. I'm okay. I'm okay if they go either way. Honestly, I don't think there's, in my mind, if they address both of those spots, I'd be fine. I'd be fine. But I have no problem. If they draft Chase, I'm totally satisfied. If they draft Sewell, you're not going to find me upset about that either. I'm team however it falls. But what I'm definitely team is my Christmas draft.
Well, hopefully on Thursday, Dave Lapham wakes up and it'll be Christmas in Cleveland
right.
in April.
Yeah, Detroit will, with the Bengals will trade down to Detroit, and it ain't happening. But it'd be nice though.
Lap, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure, Chris.